This is yet another very dark Brothers Grimm story. This is the Fitcher bird. It's a very long time ago. There was an old and evil sorcerer who would disguise himself as a poor beggar, and with a basket on his back would go begging from house to house, from door to door, knocking on doors and asking for a little bread, a little leftover stew. One day he came to the house of a family where there were 3 grown daughters, and it was the eldest daughter who answered the door and who took pity on the old man and gave him some food. And as he touched her hand, his magic meant that he had absolute power over her. And against her will, she jumped into the basket, which he carried on his back. And he carried to his house deep in the woods. And you might be expecting a beggar to be living in a little hovel, but of course he was really a sorcerer, and his house deep in the woods was a great mansion with many rooms and many riches. And the sorcerer said to the oldest daughter, "I need to go away for some time now. You can stay in the house, and you can go in any room that you like except one. This is the key which fits the lock to that room. If you go against my wishes and unlock that door, you will pay for your disobedience with your life. And the other thing that I entrust to you is this egg. Take care of this egg. Make sure nothing happens to it. I will be back in a week or so." So the eldest daughter found herself trapped in a mansion deep in the forest with a bunch of keys and instructions not to go in one locked room and instructions to look after one egg. So she wandered from room to room where there was sacks of gold. And after a few days, curiosity overcame fear, and she took the key to the forbidden room and unlocked it. And she still had the egg in her other hand as she walked into the room and saw, to her horror, a block and an axe, and the decapitated, dismembered remains of all the other women that the sorcerer had lured to his home. And in doing so, she got drops of blood on the egg. So when the sorcerer came home and demanded the egg and the keys, and he saw the blood, he knew what she had done, and he dragged her into the room and chopped off her head and dismembered her body, as he had done lots of women before. The sorcerer went back to the daughter's house, and before long the second daughter found herself in the same situation, and she too was decapitated and her body was dismembered. So the sorcerer returned to the family, and it was the turn of the third and youngest daughter. And when the sorcerer left her with the egg, she hid it in a safe place so nothing would happen to it. And when she opened the door to the locked room, she found her sister's dismembered bodies, and she put them back together again. And when every single limb was in its right place, down to the last little finger, they woke up, and the three sisters hugged each other joyfully. And because the youngest, cleverest sister had kept the egg hidden somewhere safe, and because there was no blood on it when the sorcerer returned back to his mansion, he suspected nothing. And the sorcerer said, "We will marry." My daughter said, "First, you must take my dowry. You must take some gold to my parents." So she placed her sisters in the basket and covered them with gold and said to the sorcerer, "You must walk to my home now and talk to my parents, and I will stand looking out of the window. And I have long sight, so I will be able to see you. I will know if you stop to rest." So the sorcerer walked home under the heavy burden of the two sisters and the gold that was in the basket covering them. And when he stopped on the road to rest, the younger sister's voice carried through the forest and shouted at him. So he had to get up and he had to carry on his way. The date for the wedding was set, and the sorcerer invited all his cronies to the house for the wedding. And the youngest sister took a knife and cut open a feather bed. And she rolled herself in honey and then rolled herself in the feathers, so she looked like a strange bird. And then she took one of the skulls and decorated it with jewels and placed it in the window. So when the sorcerer returned home, ready for the wedding, and he saw the skull and the jewels there in the window, he thought it was his bride. And when he saw a strange bird, a Fitcher bird, leaving the mansion, he didn't realise it was his bride. So that was how the youngest daughter escaped. The sorcerer's friends all arrived for the wedding, and shortly after, the youngest daughter's family and sisters arrived, and they locked all the doors, and they set fire to the house. And that was the end of the evil sorcerer and all his friends. It's a very similar story to that called Bluebeard, which is also deeply unpleasant. I think possibly more so if we start remembering real life events at Cromwell Street. It's a thread that runs through an awful lot of the Brothers Grimm stories of very strong women. Jacob and Wilhelm collected their stories. We know that one of the characters they spoke to was a soldier, which is why there are quite a lot of stories which we will get to, like the 12 Dancing Princesses, about a soldier returning from the war. Because inevitably, of course, this was during the Napoleonic Wars, and of course soldiers would have told stories, pray around the fire at night, and pray would have told stories about how wonderful their lives were going to be when the war was over. But a lot of the people that the Brothers Grimm spoke to were women, as women told stories as they did the spinning, as they did the sewing, like the washerwomen in Red Riding Hood. They would sing or tell stories as they did the laundry. So it's not surprising that there are so many strong women. There's a recurring theme of younger sisters rescuing their older brothers. I like to think that a lot of these stories do go back a long way. That in later years, of course, the stories were rewritten to make them more popular and easier to sell, basically. So I'm sticking to the original stories from the 1812 and 1815 editions, where women are strong and set fire to evil sorcerers. May the force be with you. If you'd like to hear some more Brothers Grimm stories, please do subscribe. There is a Facebook group called Brothers Grimm if you'd like to have a chat about any of the stories, and I hope to see you again soon, and always be wary of trusting strangers.